has Keir Starmer got this right? Is he right to ban Jeremy Corbyn from being a Labour Party candidate at the next election?
No, I have to say, I think he's got this one wrong. And I preface that, by the way, by saying that I bow to nobody in my criticisms of Corbynism. And the schism that it created in the party between the party itself and ordinary working class voters and the electoral consequences of that. But this move seems to me just to be entirely arbitrary and undemocratic. And I have to say, for the leader of the political party to effectively defenestrate the previous leader must be unprecedented. I mean, can you imagine, for example, Rishi Sunak deciding arbitrarily that Liz Truss or Boris Johnson wasn't going to be standing as a candidate for the Conservative Party at the next election? This seems to be Keir Starmer making this pronouncement on a whim. I don't think it's gone through yet the Labour Party National Executive Committee. So, as I say, I think it's arbitrary, undemocratic, it smacks of factionalism, and isn't really going to be helpful to the party when it should be focusing on winning a general election.
But it's not really arbitrarily, really, is it? Because obviously Jeremy Corbyn was leader of the party when they basically were found by the Equality and Human Rights Commission that they'd broken the law with regard to anti-Semitism. So if Keir Starmer's trying to make sure that the Labour Party puts that behind them, is this not an essential step in doing that?
Well, look, I mean, if there were evidence that Corbyn himself were an anti-Semite or had encouraged anti-Semitism, then of course, yeah, it goes without saying. There's no place in any mainstream political party, no place in society for people of those views. I think probably in terms of Corbyn, it's certainly true that during his leadership of the party wasn't quick enough in tackling the small number of anti-Semites who did exist. I think that's a fair criticism, and Corbyn has to face the music on that, unquestionably. But what I would say to people is, look, argue with him. If you disagreed with Corbyn, if you disagreed with the way that he ran the party, if you disagree with his public statements about anti-Semitism or anything else, argue with him, have the debate. But ultimately, I think the constituency Labour Party members in Islington North, where he happens to be very popular, and I'm not a Corbynite, but there's no question he's popular, they've got to have a bit of a say on that as well. It's a matter of local democracy as much as anything, I think.
Paul, and like you said, if you don't agree with somebody, you should be arguing against what they said. So this is a very interesting clip of Keir Starmer absolutely not arguing against, but defending Jeremy Corbyn to the hilt. It was circulated on Twitter by the former Minister Simon Clarke. Let's take a look at Keir here.
I'm 100% behind Jeremy Corbyn.
You are now.
I am working with Jeremy Corbyn to try to win the next general election. And don't trash the last 4 years, because what Jeremy Corbyn brought to this party, he made us an anti-austerity party that stood against cuts.
You're loyal to Jeremy Corbyn, and you've spoken in his defence just now. But Louise Ellman says that he is a danger not just to the Labour Party, but to the entire British Jewish community.
I don't accept that. I don't accept that.
So, Paul, how damaging is that clip there to Keir?
Well, I think it's always damaging if, as a politician, you are seen to be saying one thing at one moment in time, then saying a completely different thing just a couple of years down the road. People don't like double standards generally. They don't like hypocrisy. They don't like opportunism. Now, I mean, it's obviously for Sir Keir Starmer to explain why his current statements are wildly contradictory to what he said at the time. I also think there's a legitimate issue. And by the way, I think Keir Starmer's done some good things as leader of the Labour Party. I think he has tried to reconnect it with his base, and he deserves credit for that. But I do think he needs to be held to account for some of the things he said during his leadership campaign, when I think he was appealing to a certain section of the party, some of the commitments that he gave on nationalising energy, for example, and what he's doing now, which is abandoning some of that stuff. I think integrity and consistency are important in politics, and I don't think Starmer is entirely imbued with those characteristics at the moment.
And